My name is Warani Mabaso. I will be a moderator for the day. Joining me, I've got Dr. Pauline Kulip, Managing Director for Big and Global Limited. If you can just say hello to everyone.
Hello, everyone, and pleased to be part of this conversation.
I also have Dr. Rufaro Mucheka, who's the Head of Partnership and Projects at Nedbank. If you can just say hello to everybody, Dr. Rufaro.
Hi, everyone. I hope you're all well. We are looking forward to the discussion today.
Thank you. And joining us all the way from Switzerland, we have got Pauline Kulip, who's the Founding and Managing Director of She Equity. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. So looking forward to this conversation.
So the conversation for today really is about connecting Africa. And you can see here we've got Africans from various areas of the world of Africa. And what we will be talking about is connecting Africa and the role of digital inclusion in strengthening the entrepreneurial ecosystem. What we have seen over the last 30 years is that the internet has had a major impact on the world, transforming the way individuals and societies, businesses and industries function and interact. Research has also indicated that global internet users will grow from about 1.6 billion to 2.9 billion by the end of 2014. Accordingly, this is a number that is actually going to affect Africa as well, because it says that there is a remaining about 60% of approximately 4.4 billion people who are unconnected. And we have seen with the COVID-19 pandemic that the importance of digitally enhanced society is one that cannot be negotiated. So today we will be really focusing on what we need to be doing as Africans to connect and make sure that everybody can become a digitally connected society. So I'm going to start with you, Dr. Sibanda. If I can just hear from you, what do you think is the role of digital inclusion in Africa?
Yeah, so thank you very much, Halani. So Africa is really, I think it's Africa's time. For a number of reasons, the demographics indicate that 70% of Africa's population is under the age of 35. And the forecasts are that Africa will continue to grow as the most youthful continent well into 2050, 2060. And so it's more young people that Africa brings on board. Africa has faced many challenges in respect of whether it's education, its health, its financial inclusion. And I think digital inclusion becomes then important for this generation of young people that Africa is giving to the world, and the rest of the world is aging. And so digital inclusion provides Africans with an opportunity to find solutions to many challenges that she faces, that people face, but also would provide an opportunity for this youthful population to be able to service the rest of the world. We're also aware that, for example, there's a generation that has never used a fixed line telephone, and they've been able to leapfrog, and they now use mobile phones. And this particular generation is also a generation that traditionally would have been excluded from financial inclusion, access to financial services, banking. But sub-Saharan Africa has now got the largest mobile money market. And therefore, this for me is just part of the testimony of the importance of digital inclusion, making sure that Africa's youth get connected to each other, Africa's youth get access to technology, but Africa's youth get to develop solutions not only for Africa, but for the world.
Fantastic. I like the way that you're touching on mobile money. We've seen the likes of M-Pesa. We've seen how that has grown, and from Kenya to Mukuru, different things that have really come out of Africa, which are really fantastic examples of how as Africans we can actually grow our economy through some of these startups as well. So Dr. Rufaro, I just really would like to come to you and ask you why we should be obsessed as Africans about strengthening the entrepreneurial ecosystem.
Thanks, Walane. I spent about 5 years from about 2015, 2016 to last year in West Africa, and mostly Ghana, Nigeria, Cote d'Ivoire, and Senegal. And what I must say, I think coming from Southern Africa and looking at the entrepreneurial activity in West Africa and how people grow and how businesses have grown from almost nothing to something else, I strongly feel that this is our time. And if you look at companies like Google, which if you look at how it has grown, it's really around people being able to if you look at, let's say, Google Maps, for people to be able to solve a problem around people finding their way to get somewhere. If you look at Amazon, it's really a problem where people were trying to, people are battling to get, let's say, books, and, digitally a problem was solved. So if I just look at in Africa, we have a lot of problems. So for me, why we need to create that ecosystem for Africa is mainly because, it's always nice when local problems are solved by local people and because they understand the issues much better. So it's all about being able to solve the problems with people that understand them, and they also know how they can actually benefit the communities and what solving those problems actually mean to those communities. So if you look at, going back to what Dr. Sibanda just said, with these technologies that have just come on board, it actually becomes an advantage to Africa, because now one can easily connect from, whether it's from South Africa to Egypt very quickly through technology. And we can use those technologies to multiply and reach all those areas that we've never really reached before. So Africa is really in a position to solve its own problems. And the African context, we know that we've got a lot of problems. So it actually creates fertile ground to innovate, because this is where most of those problems are deeply are. And you can imagine, if we can solve African problems, it actually means we can be able to even motivate for investment and utilize those solutions that would have created to expand even outside Africa. So right now, I strongly feel that this is our time, this is the right time. Technology is going to help us really multiply and solve a lot of these African problems.
I really like what you just said, that we are in a position to solve our own problems as Africans, and it's better when problems are actually being solved by locals. So Pauline, you were born in Rwanda, and I really just want to zoom in terms of what are some of the challenges that you've seen African entrepreneurs go through, and how have you overcome those yourself as an individual?
Yeah, thanks so much, Harani. I just wanted to also build on what Dr. Rufaro just mentioned. We got a lot of opportunities in Africa before we talk about problems, right? I think an African innovator as an entrepreneur is really in a unique position, because he and she is surrounded by many opportunities to create solutions that the market wants, that customer are ready to pay for. So with that in the background, then I want to be able to highlight about two challenges, with a third challenge that is faced uniquely by women. So the first two challenges that are faced by any entrepreneur across the continent are linked to the weak ecosystems that you find everywhere. And the second is access to capital. And the third one that is uniquely faced by women is really all kind of biases that women entrepreneur innovators face. So going back and unpacking those challenges, like in terms of weak ecosystem, so here we're talking about enabling environment. And again, I'm generalizing, right? South Africa is ahead of countries like mine, Rwanda. Rwanda is a quite small country. South Africa is big, has a huge biotech and other area of innovation, very developed. But in the general, when investors or any other foreigner want to engage with Africa, they sometimes talk about Africa, right? So as if it's one country. We know it's not one country, but the existing bias, perceived bias, somehow apply to Africa, whether you are in north, in the south, in the center. For people, this is Africa, right? And despite all the opportunity we highlighted, the people don't really see that, because if they try to open a business in one country and it takes forever, they forget that, for example, in Rwanda, you can open your business in less than 5 days online. You show up, So there's also this reality that we have weaker ecosystems where the enabling environments are not necessarily conducive for businesses, but we got diverse also opportunity country by country. And I think it's important, again, when people think about those issues, to look at specificity. Again, which country are you going to? Who are you going to be engaging with? And of course, from an entrepreneur's, African entrepreneur, perspective, this is very important, because if you are a small startup trying to set up a business in a specific country in Africa, you want to know how long it's going to take you, how much money you have to pay. Do you even have to, somehow deal with issues that, other people don't deal with because you are in your specific country. So the second one is access to capital, which is really linked also with the first one. And I think, so right now the VC space is dominated by, foreign investors. We hope, we can get more Africans, because we have rich Africans also playing in this space. But the reality is you have more foreign investors, and that's not bad. It's a good thing. But the truth is also, again, those foreign investors, they have a lot of perceived risk. And the key word is perceived risk that they associate with Africa. So when they think about coming and investing in a startup in Africa, they ask all kind of requirements they never asked to an entrepreneur in Silicon Valley. They will never ask to an entrepreneur here in Zurich in Switzerland. And so how do you deal with that as a local entrepreneur? Is really basically competing with the scarce resources that are making to your continent. But one of unusual strategy that some entrepreneurs are using, which is quite sad actually, is to find a foreign investors, a foreign entrepreneurs who you add on your pitch deck, your cap table. So you have a face that looks like someone who owns money. So you have this phenomena in a few countries where a lot of businesses, startups that are growing, actually not owned by Africans. They're owned by foreigners who actually end up on a pitch deck, on cap table, just because they have the right skin color, they have connections, and that has to change. And it's a real challenge for local African entrepreneurs. So the third one for women, so women entrepreneurs face all this kind of biases, like whether it's linked to cultural biases, whether it's linked to having access to the right network, because the networking happens in an environment where if you are a good lady, supposed to be hanging out at certain hours somewhere. And lastly, remember the scarce capital. So women are competing now with the, male for this scarce capital. And right now, the few investors you have in Africa in this space, most of them are also male. So they tend also to assess, the business worthiness, the founders' credibility based on their own male perspective. So if you are a woman entrepreneurs and innovators in Africa, you have to deal with all those challenges. But as we know, women are strong, like they make it. So in my case, I think I've been, very fortunate, born in a beautiful country, but I have been living outside of Rwanda for the last 25 years now, almost, plus. So I have access to opportunities that I don't think I would have if I was still in Rwanda. And what I'm trying to do is also to share this opportunity with my fellow Africans. Thank you.
Fantastic. I'm just smiling when you're really just talking about how you're elevating Africans as well. And Dr. Rufaro, I would like to come to you. We know Pauline is from Rwanda. You're originally from Zimbabwe, and here we are having this conversation. I really would just like to know how you are leading the movement to connect Africa and contribute towards this strengthening. Pauline touched on the women entrepreneur, the challenges that Africans are experiencing, but how are you contributing towards that?
Wow, yeah. To be honest, if I look at my PhD journey, which I got in 2019, was really one of those weapons that I used, because if I look at before that, one thing that I realized was, you know what, I was just living life day by day. And I remember there was a day when I said to myself, definitely life is going to come to an end at some point. And if God asks me what I've done on this earth, what am I going to say? And I realized I do not have an answer. And I said to myself, when that day comes, I want to have a very good conversation with God and tell him a lot about the things that I've achieved. And actually prayed to say, please give me more days so that I can make the difference. So if I look at what I actually did during that time, so yes, the PhD journey was very deliberate. Even going to West Africa became part of that deliberate moves that I did in terms of, I want to, can I help my organization, unlock this commercial opportunity in West Africa, and I can also learn what's happening in those communities. And I realized that I had also skills that I could impart. So I must say that journey in West Africa, I learned a lot about side hustles. And if I look at now, I speak a lot on a lot of conferences, especially in South Africa, where I talk a lot about you need to have a side hustle. And side hustles, a lot of them actually become big businesses. I can talk for myself. I started with my side hustle, and if I look at where I am now, I'm starting to say, you know what, maybe my side hustle actually becomes my primary job, because if one is passionate about that side hustle, one can actually get very far. So if I look at the areas that I am really involved in, I write thought leadership articles, because I've also said the PhD journey exposed me to a lot of knowledge, and also my experience in West Africa, which I can share and impart. I also do that a lot. So I write on women inclusion, I write on business strategy, I write on, if you want to expand your business on the code. So I write very broadly, and I speak quite broadly as well. I also speak a lot about networks. Like Pauline was commenting about networks and at times when networks happen. But if I look at my entrepreneurial journey, a lot of it has been a lot of networks that I've made along the way. And it's also around how do you build trust? How do you do what you promise to do when you discuss with someone? Because that's how you build trust. And once that trust is there, people are willing to refer you to someone who can unlock an opportunity, because they know you're not going to disappoint them. So what I talk a lot, especially to these young entrepreneurs, it's about make sure that what you do, is something that is going to be trusted. Because if I refer you to my network, I want to know that, you are not going to let me down, because you are going to be associated with me as an individual. So what I have noticed a lot is a lot of people that have really become successful is because they've been genuine in what they did. Their social capital managed to carry them through and help them, but it's also about their personality and what they also did as individuals and the opportunities that they unlocked. So for me, I also sit on a couple of forums. The Sherry Blair Foundation, where I am their international campaign advisor, also around women, because I strongly feel, as someone who grew up in rural areas, as a woman, there are a lot of opportunities. How can we support those people to be connected, to be able to create jobs and employment? And they do a whole lot of stuff, but at times they are not acknowledged, because the world at times it tends to to kind of go around mostly men because they are more educated than women. So I think for me, it's really joining a lot of these networks, as well as areas where I can contribute. Like if I look at the Women in Tech as an advisor, I'm also on the advisory board for Africa Entrepreneurial Forum. So there's a lot of that, where we do a lot of innovation incubation and support, those ones that are starting. How do you start a business? How do you run a business? What are those tips that you need to do? So for me personally, that's really where I am. I've really become very passionate to say, now, if God were to take me today, I would have a very good conversation with him in terms of the thing that I've done ever since I decided to really change the way I live my life.
Awesome.
I like that, because you really are just touching on changing our mindset as Africans. And I want to come to you, Dr. Sibanda. You wrote a book on innovation, and you spoke about entrepreneurship and also ecosystems as well. So I want to hear from you how that connects with what we're talking about today, and why it is so important for you, and why you have really been trying so hard to make sure that we can be elevated as Africans.
Awesome. Sabina, I acknowledge the greatness in which I'm
I knew you were going to show the book.
Today. This is nuts and bolts. And I'm also pleased to say that there is a guest chapter here that was written by my good friend, Pauline. Worthwhile reading for any entrepreneur, any policymaker, and any leader in Africa looking to really understand some of the things that Dr. Rufaro has also touched upon: incubation, acceleration. How do we support entrepreneurs? What about the issues around funding? Pauline is busy, really doing great work addressing financial inclusion for women, which is very important. And then the book is really reflecting as well in terms of should one be chasing VC funding, or should one be looking at chasing customers and getting customers to, in essence, become the ones that fund the business. So the book, Nuts and Bolts, is part of my contribution to a better Africa, to the entrepreneurial ecosystem, innovation ecosystems in the continent. Over the last, 2 decades, in essence, I've been involved with intellectual property in the continent. So I'm a patent attorney. I work with the World Intellectual Property Organization, WIPO, right across the continent. In essence, being an ambassador, being a speaker, a teacher on the role of intellectual property for innovation, competitiveness. I also lecture at Africa University in Mutare on a program that WIPO and the African Regional Intellectual Property Organization support. And this is a master's program of students drawn across the continent. So this year in the master's program, there were students from 29 countries in the continent. So that's like more than half of the continent. And one gets to, in essence, interact, but also learn from these students in terms of what is happening in their countries. I've just come back from Nairobi yesterday, and great conversations with people that are doing amazing things in Nairobi. Donated 4 books of my copies of Nuts and Bolts to Konza Technopolis, who are running an innovation challenge with the Israeli government. Great to see the kind of innovations that are coming out of East Africa. And so, there is a website that I've also set up, sibandalegacy.africa, which helps to provide certain views around innovation, intellectual property. And A Space to Watch is my second book coming out later in the year that looks at intellectual property and how to build intellectual property ecosystems. And I think perhaps just to conclude on this one is that I think it's quite important for for Africans to understand that the future of Africa is in our hands. No one else. There's no one from outside of the continent that's going to come and, in essence, develop the future of the continent. They may help, but we have to lead. We have to be the ones that cast a vision and say, this is where we're going. So I'm also honored to sit on the advisory board of Share Equity that Pauline has established, and over the years been involved with her in some of the programs that she's been running. And so it is important for us to make it count.
And we're absolutely happy to have you being surrounded by all these phenomenal women who are sitting with us here. So I really just want to touch on something that both yourself and Pauline touched on around the gap in terms of funding for women. We do know that this is a challenge, and I mean, this is a platform for women who are in technology, women who are in STEM, and women who are doing a lot of different things out there. So what would be your advice? And Pauline, I'm going to come to you in terms of the funding aspect. What should be an African woman be doing right now? And what should be any other women somewhere, whether it's in Switzerland, in France, or in China, be looking out for in terms of this gap that we're currently having? And I know a lot of people have said there's no gap for funding. Is there a gap? Is there no gap? But what should they be doing? Maybe if you start there.
Yeah, yes, there is a gap, and the gap is big. It's $42 billion US. That's the funding gap for African female entrepreneurs. So there's this big gap, but there's so many also opportunities. African continent is the #1 continent with the highest number of female entrepreneurs. So go figures. I mean, you really don't, I don't understand. So there's people needing money, people creating businesses, and then still, I guess, connected to issues I mentioned before, African entrepreneurs continue to struggle to access capital. Specifically, like in 2019, only 5% of VC funding went to female founders. And this is really sad because, again, globally, also about 50% of Africans are actually female, right? So which means basically we're leaving out the 50% of our people who actually raise the remaining 50%. And we say the time is ours, the time is now. Africa is rising. I always laugh when people say Africa is rising. I'm like, I would say Africa is rising when I see that every single woman, female entrepreneurs, young child who wants to go to school has opportunity, because we can never be rising if we're leaving, 50% of our people behind. And I wanted to highlight, this is not a charity. It might be a right thing to do, but it's actually a business case to begin with, right? So they're quite right now a lot of research that have been done, because people keep thinking, oh yeah, you're investing in women. Oh, you're so nice. You're doing a nice thing. No. It's not about doing a nice thing. It's about realizing that there's a huge business potential, because now, again, more than ever, there's quite enough research showing that if you invest in a female entrepreneur, actually your money, you most likely going to be able to see your money plus social and environmental return. So basically hitting the bottom, triple, the triple bottom line in terms of your return. So the statistics show that women reinvest about 90% of their revenue into sector that benefits the community, the society, the countries, comparing it to 40% for male. And again, going back, you have a $42 billion funding gap. You have only 5% going to VC, going into female, led businesses. While actually the research show that women, generate better return from like financial, but also impact return than if you were to invest in the male entrepreneurs. I think I'm not saying we should not invest in the male entrepreneur. I'm just saying we need to create the level playing field. So where we include women because, and this is not just about question of diversity for the heck of diversity. It's just realizing that the women also, most of the business created by women are informed by the need to, solve a problem. And then most of the time, because they have spent the time understanding the problem, their solution have a huge market reach. So they do what, my friend McLean has talked about. They don't necessarily chase the VC. Maybe that's one of the reasons they're not getting funding, by the way, because they're very focused in trying to solve a problem, getting customers, and hoping that people will realize the potential and they come and invest in them. Now, because I usually like not to complain. I saw this, and I have all of us, we have sat in many panels discussing about the problem. This statistics are thrown everywhere. So at some point I decided, okay, I don't want to be talking about the problems anymore. I want to be talking about the solution. I want to be a part of the group that say, okay, yes, we've taken note, there's a problem, but what are you doing about it? So what I decided to do is basically set up She Equity. The word means what it is. It's basically equity for equity for women. And basically what we do, we are building an ecosystem of investment where we want to make sure that if you are, a female entrepreneur in Africa, working as hard as any other entrepreneurs, you don't get punished just for being where you are or being you, right? That we see the opportunity. So the idea is to provide early stage investment, in essence, building a pipeline, working with incubator accelerators, and providing on the top of the cash, we add technical support. We provide also the connection, access to high value networks, because all of us, we are here because we networked. And we want to make sure that we can use these networkers to benefit other African entrepreneurs who are not as privileged as we are. Because I am convinced that if we want to address this 42 billion funding gap in Africa, we need to be providing what I call smart money. Smart money means it's more than cash. It means it's a cash plus technical support and the basic access to high value networks. So you can actually, as an entrepreneur, focus on building the business and getting your customer to validate your business. So you can go out and just solve all the problems we see on the continent. So that's basically what I'm trying to do, my contribution. I believe the future is in Africa, but I also think the future is in the hands of African female entrepreneurs. So if we don't invest in them, we can't seize the future.
And this is why we've got platforms such as Women in Tech really are in the forefront of driving this for women in particular. So Dr. Rufaro, I would like to hear from you. You work in a financial institution as well. So how are you contributing towards this financial inclusivity as well as ensuring that we can close this gap? And I mean, Pauline spoke about smart money and smart finance. So what are you doing from a bank perspective?
Yeah, I think if you look at traditional banks generally, they are still very much into, the way credit is done. It's really those standard processes where, So one is to know whether if I give you money, will I get something back? In terms of, do you have in assets? As surety, because especially if you look at, especially during COVID as well, where business is really battered. So you find a lot of the traditional banks are still using a lot of that. But what I must say is what banks are doing, especially if I look at, especially in my case, they are very involved into the innovation in incubators, where they provide, skill support, and also they also create a platform in such a way that, there are certain thresholds that those businesses can actually meet. And I'm not sure, if I'm not mistaken, I think we are looking at maybe top 5 or top 10, they actually get sponsored. So they actually go onto a journey, because on the other end as well, You wouldn't want just to give money to someone who doesn't even understand how to run business. So even if an idea might appear to be a good idea, you also want to make sure that that business is solid enough, it's on a good foundation. So that's what we do a lot from a business perspective, so that we give the support and maybe it talks to what Pauline was talking about, smart money, because it's not just about the money, it's really about the support that comes with it. So yeah, we are very much involved, especially from an incubation perspective, especially for those young entrepreneurs. And we find that especially in this day, in this day's age, fintechs, they tend to really be leading, because if you look at the technologies and the businesses that they build, they tend to multiply much more because the reach is quite large as well.
Yeah, fantastic. So I can see that we're almost at the end of our conversation, and it seems as there's so much passion in this room. We can talk about Africa, entrepreneurship, digitally connected entrepreneurs for the whole day. So I want to just hear from you, Dr. McLean, your last words and thoughts around how we should, as Africans, really focus on a digitally enhanced society so that we can create more digitally equity for Africans.
Yeah, so, I think there's a lot that, Pauline and Dr. Rufaro have covered. So I think for a start, we need to relook our education system. We need to make sure that there is, we bridge the gender gap. We need to get more girl children into school. We need to empower them with the digital tools. We need to make sure that they are connected. We need to also start to encourage more women to get into the VC space, because I think part of the challenge around women being excluded in terms of funding is they're pitching to panels that are male. And they don't understand, women. They don't understand that women are multipliers. So we need to actually encourage more people like yourself, Dr. Rufaro and Pauline, to really get into the VC space. But also we need to also encourage my fellow men to actually understand the fact that women founders are multipliers more so than male, founders. Women, when they embark on an entrepreneurial journey, they're quite deliberate about what they want to achieve. I think the future is bright, but we have to be more deliberate. We have to make it count.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for allowing me to engage with you today. This was a wonderful conversation to have. What I got from all of you is that the future is in Africa, but it is in our hands. And we have to collaborate as Africans and work very hard to ensure that we put women in the forefront. This is part of what we are trying to achieve as women in tech. Thank you so much for joining into this conversation. And I would really like to encourage you to join us on our Women in Tech platform, so that we can continue the conversation. From my side, Warani Mabaso, thank you so much for joining in. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Hi, good day. My name is Elisa Slaymaker, and I'm the Chapter Ambassador and Country Director for Women in Tech South Africa. We are very pleased today to be having a fireside chat as part of the 24-hour virtual world tour. And today we are joined by Elisa Mashani. Elisa, which I want to introduce to you all. She's got an inspirational story and life journey, and I'm so excited to share her story with you all today. Elisa grew up in Gugulethu townships in Cape Town, South Africa. She holds a Bachelor's of Commerce Honours degree from UCT and currently also doing her Master's degree in Philosophy at the UCT Graduate Business School or School of Business. Elisa currently also works as the IT executive, or one of the IT executives at Sanlam, which is one of South Africa's leading insurers. And her experience in IT spans across various industries, where she works on IT business engagement and also innovation across South Africa. So good day, and hello, Elisa. Thank you so much for joining us as part of this fireside chat and the Women 24-Hour World Tour. How are you today?
Hi, Melissa. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I think I'm very much excited to be part of this virtual world tour. It is my first one, and I'm really just excited to be part of it all.
Thank you so much. So, Elisa, the stage is yours. Tell us a little bit about, your journey. Your journey, and also where does your passion for empowering women come from?
So I think you've touched a bit about where I come from. I was born in the township of Ubuletu in Cape Town. So Melissa, I was raised by a single parent, and being raised in a single parent, I grew up in a household that was really filled with many women. My grandmother herself had four daughters, and unfortunately, of the 6 grandchildren that she had, only 2 were boys and the rest were girls. So being brought up in by a single parent in a Xhosa home, if you're not married in the Xhosa culture, then you stay with your parents for as long as possible. So there I was in a house filled with lots of women who really inspired me. I took a lot of inspiration from my mother, my aunts, as well as my grandmother. But to come to your question as to why really I've had the passion for women is, growing up in a household there with lots of women personalities. I was also raised in a cultural, highly patriarchal kind of environment where when we do our rituals, our Xhosa rituals, I've grown up seeing the back seat that women have taken, where men really have more of a voice around those type of engagements than females. Whereas then having grown up as a Black woman as well, I've seen how Black women, when they engage with white people, how different they are in their engagements and engaging in a type of way where they feel a bit inferior to their white peers. And really, I thought that I would like to challenge that status quo. I wouldn't want any female in the 21st century thinking that they are less off compared to any other person of a different race and of a different gender. So it is really those perceptions that lots of women in South Africa have found themselves in that I grew a passion to really try and change the status quo, but also to have more engagements with women and to try and change their perspective so that they're more confident about themselves, not only in their communities, in their homes, but also in the workspaces that they find themselves in. So yeah, really, it's the home that I grew in. That had lots of powerful women around me really gave me the passion for women empowerment.
I think you're very lucky, and I think I draw from similar experiences in the way that I had really powerful women in our family growing up, and I've always been spurred on to believe that you can achieve anything if you put your mind to it. But I think in Africa there are so many different cultures, and so and that really has an effect on how people are perceived or perceive themselves in terms of their confidence level and in terms of penetrating the workforce. And we as Women in Tech are doing hopefully a few things around that to help people in their journey and to make it a bit easier. One thing that always sticks with me is you can't be what you can't see. So in your opinion, how important is it to have female leaders as role models and mentors? So what are your thoughts around that?
Melissa, I think that it's very, very important for women leaders to show up in the workplace, and not only to show up for themselves, but to show up for others. So having role models for me, my role models have not been people that I see on TV, have not been people that were out of reach for me. My role models are my mother, my 3 aunts, and my grandmother. I mean, these women raised their children alone without complained a single day. I've never once heard my mom complaining about having to raise my sister and I and my other cousins all by herself. The kindness and the generosity that my grandmother exuded, even to the person who wronged her yesterday, made me really learn a lot. Apologies for that. I thought this wasn't silent. So coming back to the workplace, I think that when you come into a workplace, there are people who come from various backgrounds. You know, there are people who probably have come from backgrounds where it is taboo to have to question a person who is older than you. We come from backgrounds where it is probably taboo if you are Black to challenge a white person. We come from backgrounds, some of us come from backgrounds where you can't really be assertive or confident around a male figure. So having all of these young females coming into the work environment, it is pivotal for us who already found themselves in leadership positions to open our doors to young people so that they grow up with enough confidence to take up on the challenges that are brought by the workplace. And you will know very well that once you step into the workplace, there are various other challenges that you have to come across yourself. So if you do not have a person who you can really and truly resonate with and have open discussions with, then your progress and you know, your growth within the workplace then somewhat becomes impeded. I feel that it is important as female leaders not only to talk about having an open door policy, but to really demonstrate it by greeting younger people, by greeting younger colleagues in the passages, by greeting and making conversations in the lifts, making it an effort to remember people's names. I remember very much how many young people before this COVID pandemic, where I would have young people come into my office. You know, they would send instant messages to say sis aluta, because you know, as Black people, that's how we've been brought and raised up. You don't just address an older person by their name. They'd say, sis aluta, I've been coming to your office but I can't find you, I really need to talk. And I'll say, come in such and such a time, I'll be free from meetings. And you know, just providing a space for these young people to just vent and to cry and to ask for guidance was just enough, where they felt that they could not approach, you know, they
Sorry, I just wanted to just speak about that a bit more. It's actually, you've made it a little bit more, just rather than an open door policy, you've actually created a Women in IT program in Sanlam. Talk to us a bit about that program and why the need was there and how you created that Women in IT network within your organization that you're currently working in.
So I want to give credit to that to my then line manager, Mr. Andile Swatboy. He is actually the person who wanted a platform for women within IT. So yes, you would think that it's something, it was the brainchild of a female, but it was actually a brainchild of a male.
More about that, definitely. We need more male.
Yes, so that's why I would really like to give credit to him. But you know, he approached me. He said, "Aluta, I would like you to start a woman in IT type of forum." And he really gave me no scope. That is pretty much all that he had said. So immediately I said yes to him, because empowerment of not just women, but empowerment of young people was something that was very close to my heart. And immediately I invited all women who wanted to participate and create an environment and a space for women to grow, for women to feel inspired, motivated, and really to create an environment where women knew that their work matters and their work is brilliant and they can dream of getting a seat on the boardroom. So I invited invited all women. We ended up with a core team of about 10 to 12 women. We then broke down and we said, well, our vision is really just to create a space where women can grow and inspire in each other and really motivate each other. And we put together empowerment talks where we had powerful women, not only from internally to Sanlam, but outside of Sanlam to come and inspire and motivate women. We also arrange sessions where women can get closer to female senior leaders within the Sanlam business, who can then really share with them advice and can share with them their own wisdom and how they tackle, the corporate environment. And lastly, what's very close to me is that we have a pillar where we give back to other women, whether it's young kids in matric and dressing up for their matric ball, to as far as providing toiletries and so forth to women who need them. So yeah, that's Women in IT and what we do at the moment.
And also, Elisa, we also collaborated recently on a program called This Is Me, in conjunction with University of the Western Cape. And this particular program is working with women in tech to really address the confidence of young women coming into the corporate world or just about to graduate from university, to give them the confidence. And these are, programs. What has been your experience so far of this particular This Is Me program? And why do you think it's so important to have programs like these?
Wow, I think the program for me has really been great, and it has really been exciting. Not only because I was part of the team that brought this together, but we sat and thought with Chantal Paul, our head of HR, where in a conversation that I had with her, I said, you know what, Chantal, there are lots of young people who join the IT environment with enough technical skills. They are brilliant technically. But really what breaks my heart sometimes is that these young people do not have the relevant soft skills that are required in a corporate type of environment. I see a lot of these young people being shattered when they have to receive bad feedback, because they don't really haven't been taught to receive that kind of feedback. We have young people who are not confident enough to stand in a crowd and present confidently their own work and really motivate their own work. I've seen a lot of young people who've really come into the corporate environment and have left shattered, not because they have failed in delivering their work technically, but because they did not have enough confidence, did not show enough assertiveness, and really did not have a person coaching them within that environment. So the This Is Me program is really to prepare graduates and young people who find themselves currently in the workplace, equipping them with the necessary skills, soft skills that are required in a workspace, like confidence, like assertiveness, like those presentation skills that are required, because those then, coupled with the strong technical skills that they have, could only make them great leaders in the IT environment.
It's great to actually also show, hopefully at the end of the program, we can see the impact that we're having. And I think that's what Women in Tech really stand for. It's not just, listening to a problem and acknowledging that there's still this need, but actually doing something about it. And I'm really proud of the work that we've been doing. And I already get inspired just by listening to these lovely young students, sharing their stories and engaging with them. So I also feel very privileged really to be part of it. And hopefully we can do more of these kind of programs for other companies throughout over the next few years. Just in closing off and kind of wanting to address, or not really, but just we're currently in the fourth industrial revolution. So there are all of these technologies, blockchain, AI, machine learning, robotics, data science, etc. In your opinion, what can we do now to ensure that we're preparing the future of work for these students, and also ensuring that this future is diverse enough?
Melissa, I think for me, it starts with making quality education accessible to all South African children. I think that is the very start for us. If you look at corporates, the private sector, I don't think they lack in funding. I don't think that they lack in knowledge and the right structures to implement the fourth industrial revolution technologies. If I look at our universities, I do not think that there is nothing much lacking in terms of the skills that they impart on students to prepare them for the fourth industrial revolution. But where I see that there is a dying need, it is in our basic education system. We still have a basic education system where the poorest of kids in the rural areas and in the townships do not even have the privilege of working on a computer. Now, we cannot speak of fourth industrial revolution when we still have grade 8 students in a township who cannot even use a mouse. We cannot speak of fourth industrial revolution when the cost of data is so high and unattainable to the majority of the people living in this country, and the majority of learners in the country being in townships and in rural areas. And for me, really, we cannot speak of fourth industrial revolution where you go to a school in Crossroad with a computer lab of only 15 computers serving a school of about 1,400 learners. It needs to start at our education level. We need to make sure that our children at a very young age have access to computer and have access to and are being taught technical skills like coding, like robotics in all schools, and not just the privileged schools. So I would like to really see government partnering more with the private sectors in providing the necessary hardware that is required at schools, ensuring that the computers at the schools are well serviced so that teachers can continue teaching in the new way of teaching. Because what sets us a step back to countries in Asia, for an example, is that many of our children only are exposed to the computer for the very first time when they hit university. Already then there is a huge gap that these students have to overcome. So for me, really, it starts at making quality education accessible to all children in our country.
No, I love that, and I agree with you. And I think it's definitely something that needs to continue throughout your career is that accessibility to technology, accessibility to upskilling opportunities. I mean, you think that it's easy, in brackets, to get qualified or to get online education, but if you haven't got the actual infrastructure, you don't know where to start. It's a huge problem in South Africa. So it's been a real pleasure talking to you. But before I sort of turn off, do you have a favorite quote? And I always like to ask if you have a favorite quote and why is that your favorite quote and why does it resonate with you?
Yes, I do have a favorite quote. It's not by anyone famous, but it's from a former mentor of mine who always said to me in motivating me. He always said, Aluta, don't chase money, do the job and the money will follow. And this resonates with me very much, Melissa, because often we found ourselves being under pressure to provide the material things that we want, and the material things that being a better education for my child, or living in a nice neighborhood where I would have to fork out millions. And because of that pressure, then you find yourself wanting highest paying jobs and being under pressure to find highest paying jobs. And for me, whenever I remind myself of this, that Aluta, if you do your job and you do your job well and you excel in your job, then all of the opportunities will come to you. So for me, really, don't chase the money, do the job, and the money will follow you.
I love that as well. Thank you very much, Elisa, for your time today. I hope everyone enjoys the rest of the Women in Tech 24-hour World Tour. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.